thank you very much for being here. We're going to continue our meeting. We're now back in session. And this is a work session on FY 21-26 Capital Improvement Program. And the first, if I could ask, please, the first person that we're going to be hearing from is Dr. Torregas on the FiberNet from Go.
Thank you very much. The Government Operations Committee met on February the 10th to review the FiberNet program, which is a broadband program that the county started more than 25 years ago. It provides connectivity to more than 500 county facilities, including police stations, fire stations, all the schools, high schools, elementary schools. It's a very vital part of our infrastructure. The request by the executive was for $6,152,000, an amount that the GO committee approved. And if I could make one slight note.
Absolutely, please.
The committee requested that the Department of Technology Services that manages this important program come back to the committee back in the fall of 2020 to give some indication of whether there can be additional revenue sources to fund this $6 million, because right now it comes from the cable fund, and there is some uncertainty about cable revenues over the next 3 to 5 years. That's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. The committee chair is not here, so does that conclude the committee's presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to say welcome to the team, FiberNet team. I really hope we will have a breakthrough on the possibility of leasing out some capacity in FiberNet. It's been a long-standing goal, certainly for me, and other communities do it. You know, Baltimore has this conduit network, former water pipes and then new pipes that they've added in, and they lease that out, and they make a lot of money every year from the telecom companies that lease space in their conduit. Joe, I think you were in Arlington, and you have some revenue that you raised there from the leasing out the county fiber infrastructure to the private sector, and it has been something that I've wanted us to do for years. We haven't ever quite gotten there, but I hope this year will be the year. And Director, it's good to see you. So maybe you could share some comments on that.
Yes, I know that Joe has a background. I've also had the opportunity to work in Austin, where we were actually doing conduit.
In Austin,
bank.
you said?
Austin, Texas.
Right.
Yes.
You had a conduit strategy
bank.
there?
Yes, the telcos used it at a 20-year lease. The revenues are still coming into the city, so we'll put our heads together and get this done.
Great. And I'm glad we have FiberNet. I think we have a more extensive fiber network than most local governments have. It is really a signal achievement for the county, and we get a lot of benefit, a lot of economic return. We're not having to pay the private sector for that resource. And we've had we've had to do a lot here at the council over the years to add funding and ensure that is running at its highest level. And I'm glad that we're there today, and let's continue to build on that. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. There's no other lights. Is there any other questions? No. We can approve this without objection? It is approved. Thank you. Next is Ultra Montgomery, which is also Dr. Torregas. So if you would please explain that to us.
Ultra Montgomery was initiated some 8 years ago as an effort to develop partnerships between the public and the private sectors, and to use telecommunications technology and broadband technology to develop economic development opportunities. The committee reviewed the requested budget of $680,000 and approved it unanimously. The one area that the committee did discuss is to make explicit the relationship between that Ultra Montgomery investment we make and the economic development strategies of the county, and DTS has agreed to make that a specific focal point for their views going forward. That's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, I'll be brief. We had a really good and productive conversation in the committee. I won't bore my colleagues or the millions watching at home, as Councilmember Joanna would say.
Let me be the first to say thank you. Thank you.
With that, but I did just want to note for colleagues, FiberNet is really about government. Ultra Montgomery is really about the private sector and providing fiber opportunities and infrastructure to create economic development and economic activity. So, really key issue that we're focused on of how we can become more attractive and capitalize on the interest that we know exists on technology-dependent businesses and technology businesses themselves. And we had a really robust discussion on that. I hope that we will continue to pursue that. I know that our efforts working with the Economic Development Corporation and with other private sector partners to figure out how we capitalize on this investment. To me, this is just like transportation. This is an infrastructure investment that is about connecting our businesses to our communities and our private sector to the rest of the world. And in so doing, I think will help set us up for future success as we move forward. So I'm very bullish on this. I'm very excited about it, and look forward to you coming back next year, as I had mentioned, and reporting some significant, specific examples of businesses that are taking advantage of this and that otherwise may not have chosen to locate or expand in Montgomery County, but do so because of the forward-looking investment that we made in Ultra Montgomery.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. I appreciate your comments. It's good to know you're on the committee to continue the focus on broadband infrastructure. It's something I spent 8 years working towards when I was on the committee, and this initiative is one I worked really closely with County Executive Leggett to propose and to press for funding for. And there's a lot of very concrete achievements for this project already. We've got a shortcut, a fiber highway to Northern Virginia, where so many of the kind of global data centers are. We have the East County conduit and open access network we're building in the White Oak area. We're building a new access point for the whole East Coast, main line of fiber. And I appreciate the comments about the need of the private sector to have access to the fastest speeds and the best technology in communications. This is not the only example where we need to face forward and make decisions. 5G is another one. All right, we can talk about opening up our fiber network to the few companies that will lease from it, and that is a good thing for us to do. Let's talk about how every resident of Montgomery County and every single business is going to rely upon wireless for their communications needs. The county executive has said, let's not move forward on wireless rezoning. We need to move forward on it. We've got to rezone to allow the next generation of wireless technology to be deployed in Montgomery County. This is a great solution. This is a part of a puzzle, and wireless is a bigger part of the puzzle. And we've got to be a community where you can get the latest technology, the latest technology works, because it's all designed to run on the fastest networks. We need to have the fastest networks, and 5G is a big part of that as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Joando.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to thank you all for being here. I don't have the pleasure of serving on the GO committee, but I know it's ably served by the members that are on it. I was really happy to see the discussion, in addition to the East County Conduit and the White Oak Science Gateway and Great Seneca, and you discussing the opportunity to get up into the Ag Reserve as an additional point. I'm not sure who brought that up, but I know it was discussed in committee. I think Councilmember Friedson. This continued issue of equity, how do we make sure people have access, in addition to helping our businesses, again, which I always say, 98% of whom are under 100 people, 95% under 50 people, and we do a lot of things to try to support them. This is an important program, and I'm excited. This is your first time before us in your new capacity and the whole team, so look forward to working with you, and please, let's get a meeting soon. That's the other thing I wanted to say. So thank you very much, and look forward to supporting this.
Thank you. There are no other lights on. Is there any other conversation on this? Quick question. Okay.
The unencumbered balance is $2 million. Is that right? So what is the plan? Is the committee satisfied with the plan to expend that unencumbered balance?
If you look at the second bullet, Councilmember Reamer, DTS intends to spend down the entire balance in fiscal '20.
Fiscal '20, and how will that be used?
It'll be
County,
used
Great
to complete two projects, the East County Fiber Highway, Phase
Yep.
2, and the Great Seneca Fiber Highway project.
Awesome. Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Unless, I guess we should we should do it by hand vote. All those in favor of approving this, please do so by raising your hand. Opposed? Carries unanimously by those present. Next is the Fed Committee has a few items, and the Fed Chair is here if you wanted to comment on those.
Thank you. We have two fairly bite-sized items today. The first is some funds that are in the capital budget for HOC, and then the second is a portion of the work around with DHCA around housing. The bigger items related to housing finance are going to be taken up in the context of the operating budget. We kind of blend capital and operating budget later in the spring. So today's discussion is just around a few fairly discrete elements. So the first of those is the HOC, some of their funding arrangements. We have a renewable, we have a fund that HOC is able to tap into for the purchase of MPDUs when an MPDU becomes available. That is because we created a fund many years ago, and we paid off the debt from that fund, and it remains available to access on short notice. So HOC uses that from time to time. And there are a few other funds, so I'll turn it to Linda to walk us through the packet.
So you have in front of you 5 items that are in the CIP for the Housing Opportunities Commission. The county executive fully funded the request of HOC, so there's no discrepancy, and the Fed committee approved that. The first item that is in the packet is the demolition fund, and this is the county's contribution to the cost of demolishing what was the Ambassador, because now that's flat. So what was the Ambassador to get ready for redevelopment, and then also Emery Grove Village will have some demolition going on there as well. And so this is the final sort of installment of the county's agreed to contribution for the demolition of those facilities so that they can be redeveloped by HOC into mixed-use affordable housing projects. The second, which is part of the 3 funds that are available to HOC that Mr. Reamer discussed in terms of financing, is the county guaranteed bond projects. These were all 3 of these were approved decades ago, actually, like many, many years ago. This first one is the county has said that they would guarantee up to $50 million of HOC bonds if they are needed. This one is used less frequently, but it has been used in the past. And this assists with the financing because the cost to HOC, should they use such a bonding, would be more favorable given the county's guarantee. The second is the MPDU Property Acquisition Fund. This is approximately $12.5 million. Again, these monies, which were approved a long time ago, are available to be used by HOC. HOC takes them out, uses them, gets financing back in, repays that into the account, and then that money is available up to this maximum to be used by HOC. And the third is a similar fund of $4.5 million, which again was approved many years ago. It's a revolving account. HOC can draw from that. HOC gets permanent financing, they pay that back in, and so the fund revolves up to this maximum amount. The committee did have discussions about how these funds are used. There is more information in the memo that HOC provided about the kinds of projects where they've drawn upon these different accounts. Some of them, particularly in the MPDU one, is used to assist them buying MPDUs that are used for their home ownership program, but then the others can be used for development funds that are needed in the short term until they can get permanent financing. Again, there's no change in the maximum amounts of these funds in the CIP, and the executive recommended no changes. So all this is just still in place. And then the last one is the supplemental funds for deeply subsidized HOC-owned units. And Montgomery County, I would just say, has had a long-standing policy of providing its housing authority with funds every year to make sure that what previously might have been, public housing, as it would have been called, but now we've moved those into other programs, but we still have very, very deeply subsidized units. The federal government and the income from those units doesn't always provide enough money for maintenance, and so Montgomery County has always wanted to make sure that HOC has funding to keep quality units, even those that are the most deeply subsidized. And so they have the ability to use these funds to do renovations, upgrade bathrooms, upgrade kitchens, do those kinds of things. And so those are the projects before you. Again, there's not really any significant changes, and the executive funded HOC's request on these.
Okay.
All right, so that's the committee recommendation, and it was unanimous.
Although, we have some speakers. Councilmember Giwando.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the chair. It was a productive session. Thank you all for being here. And thank you for the follow-up information about the acquisition fund. And I know that was something that I had asked about, and appreciate that. I will not take it personal that you demolished my campaign residence recently, at the ambassador. No, obviously joking. Councilman Bremer and I joked that.
He added some money to the fund to make sure that it happened.
Exactly right.
Wow.
Actually, they did the same thing to me, so it's really nothing personal.
Right, exactly. It's a HOC practice to demolish former campaign residences. You're in it. You're in it as well. Okay, there you go. But no, really happy to see that work moving forward. Excited about the project there, the partnership, and I think that's going to be a great facility. I did have just one question related to the draw. Is there a certain level that funds available for you shouldn't fall below? And if so, what happens? Or obviously come back. I'll let you explain that. When that level is reached, if there is a.
Good morning, Kayreen Brown, Chief Investment and Real Estate Officer with HOC. And just to clarify, are you referring to the MPDU Property Acquisition Fund? Yes. There isn't any specific level below which there's a cause for concern, because as we've stated, these funds are revolving, and there's an expectation that they're replenished in the short term. Based on the information we've provided and the history of the use of the fund, you'll see that throughout the year, funds are constantly being repaid into the fund. And most recently, you'll see that fund will almost be at capacity. However, before the end of this calendar year, the funds drawn for our most recent project, Shady Grove, West Side Shady Grove project, is expected to be financed and paid back to the tune of about $4.5 million. So we're constantly paying back throughout the year, even though at year end it may appear that we're close to capacity. There's a constant replenishing and reusing of the fund. It's used as needed.
Great. Well, that's good to hear, and it looked like over the past 5 years that you sent, the lowest it got was 2.5, like 2 million or so. So that's great.
Right, and sometimes it's almost at capacity, but again, there's constant churning of the funds throughout the year.
Okay, thank you, and this was helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Contrary to what our county executive may believe, we need to continue to provide more affordable housing for our communities, and certainly HOC plays a key role. I had the fortunate fortunate's not the right word, but at our National Association of Counties conference, which is going on right now, the special assistant to the president was addressing the board of directors at NACO, and so I asked him directly about why the president chose to continue to reduce by 18% last year his proposal for funding for affordable housing. His response was that local governments are responsible because of the regulations that we have and the challenges that we place on development, and so it's owned by us, and we need to get ourselves out of our own problem. I say that because it's imperative for folks to know about the tie between HOC and the federal government in terms of its support, and we will continue to need to watch this, especially not only with this impending election, but over the next 4 years, should this president be reelected, because his consistent rebuffing of support for affordable housing and housing vouchers is going to continue to create a challenge. And so when it comes to all of the projects that you're looking to do and to start up, it's going to be incredibly difficult. And so I've had multiple conversations with your executive director, Stacey Spann, about this. I'm incredibly concerned, and I just want to put that out there so that we know and are starting to think about this. And I hope that our residents are thinking about this as well, because certainly if you care about affordable housing, you should be supporting affordable housing initiatives like HOC, and if you're doing that, then your decision should be clear this fall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Riemann.
Thanks. I just wanted to, again, sort of highlight this revolving fund that HOC has to buy or renovate through the MPDU fund. So the county set this up a number of years ago and created a certain amount of debt and then paid it off. And then that money sits in an account, and HOC has regular access to it. So over the years, the amount of funding that HOC has been able to access relative to the amount of funding that the county put in, it's probably 10-fold or 20-fold, or maybe by this many years, 50-fold, who knows? So, by putting some money on the table and then committing to a payoff strategy, the county was able to have a really, really big impact. I think this is a model we could do a lot more with, and something we're going to be working on over the next couple months as we proceed with the affordable housing, various funding streams that we're working on. So again, it really paid off for the county to establish a fund, pay off the principal, and then HOC would have it in perpetuity. This fund will still be here 50 years from now, and we didn't have to add anything to it this year, but there's millions of dollars there for you to access.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo everything that's been said about our need to address affordable housing. As we said during the committee, we're not going to be able to preserve our way out of this problem. Preservation needs to be part of the solution. It's an important and critical part of the solution, but you can't solve a massive supply problem without adding supply. And so we need to create new housing. We need to preserve existing housing. We need to make sure that we have the necessary amount of housing to meet the demand of our residents, and that requires investment, it requires creativity, it requires a real comprehensive, serious look at how we address these challenges, and it doesn't happen in a vacuum, it happens in the marketplace. And I appreciate the work that HOC does. You really are at the crux of that private and public intersection of where housing is, but regardless of HOC or elsewhere, it's public-private partnerships and us nurturing nature and the nature of the economy and of the marketplace to make sure that we have the housing that we need. I look forward to that robust conversation. These were the simple ones that we took up. We have much more creativity and challenges that we need to address. I'm glad and proud of the work that we did last year, adding the $5 million into the HIF. I was proud to lead that effort and have the unanimous support of colleagues to make sure that we weren't taking a step backwards in affordable housing. I think that we can and need to push the needle even more this year. I appreciate the fact that the county executive has set that as the baseline for moving forward. That's the floor, but we can't solve this problem if we just create what we've been creating for the last few years. Just close on one statistic that I used last year in making the case for adding the additional funding just to get us to the previous year's commitment. But as of last year, 55% of our housing stock was built before 1950. 14% was built since 2000. That isn't good enough. That is not going to cut it. That is not going to meet the needs that we have, and I am proud of the work that this council has done, and look forward to working together with HOC, with our nonprofit partners, with our private sector partners, with DHCA and the executive branch to solve the crisis that we face, because it's a social imperative, it's an economic imperative, and it's an environmental imperative, because where people live really does have a major impact on the environment. So appreciate the work and look forward to taking up the even more challenging conversations as we move forward in the budget and make the tough decisions we'll need to make to address the issue.
Thank you. All those in favor of this item, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously by those present. And you have the next one as well.
Great. So the next item is component of the, I hate it when that happens.
Well, you thought it.
He pulled a Sydney.
Yeah. You thought he was laughing at you, didn't you? But anyhow.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
And you too. All right, so next item is DHCA's facility planning and community development functions. And joining us, we have Pofin Salam and Tim Getzinger. And Linda, why don't you walk us through?
As Councilmember Reamer noted, it's been the practice of the Fed Committee and the Council to have a committee work session on the affordable housing component of the CIP, but not to bring it forward to the full council until we get the operating budget and can see the totality of the Housing Initiative Fund. And so before you at this session today is the project that relates to facility planning for housing and community development. And this is the community development side of the department. And the project itself is relatively small in terms of funding. It's $125,000 a year. That's consistent with what has been previously appropriated. And what you'll see in the packet is that the committee did have a discussion that what those funds are used for is for the department to undertake studies of certain communities or projects to determine their eligibility for the use of community development block grant funding or other funding in order to make improvements. And so the committee did walk through the projects that are described for you in the staff report and had a little bit of focus talking particularly about Kimberly Place, which the department has done a lot of work. This is a affordability level condominium, so it provides home ownership opportunities, but at more modest prices. And as we know, it's very hard for sometimes for those kinds of condominium communities to have reserves if something dramatic comes along. And so what they found is they had a lot of drainage issues that were causing some foundation issues and balcony issues. And so this is the kind of place where the department can use its facility planning money to go in and see if there are other monies available to assist with, like, repairs of balconies and repairs of drainage, those kinds of things, to make sure that that remains quality housing for the families that live there. But there are other projects that are listed. The committee did discuss what the different criterias are in terms of income and the kinds of projects. And so Mr. Getzinger can answer questions about any particular project. And then I would just say that in addition, this was not actually a CIP project, but the committee just did have a little discussion with the department about the funding that was put in FY19 to allow them to continue to try to work with the owners of the Glenmont Shopping Center to see if some improvements can be made to the facades and other aspects of the Glenmont Shopping Center. And so the committee used their session as just an opportunity to get some updates on that. There's no new money associated with that, but it was a follow-up given the council's actions of FY19.
Right.
Okay. Great. You good?
Okay, good.
All those in favor of this area, Department of Housing and Community Affairs, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous by those present. Next is under the Public Safety Committee, and Susan Farag is going to explain to us the first two, and Dr. Torregas and Susan Farag will explain the next two after that. Susan, whenever you are ready, please.
Yes, the first department up for review for the CIP is the Police Department, and this CIP involves 4 projects this year. The committee met on these, and it recommended that 2 of these projects be expedited by 1 year each, and that recommended that the rest of the CIP projects be approved as submitted by the executive. This represents a $43 million expenditure schedule for the next 6 years. That is an increase from the last approved CIP of about $12.8 million, and most of that is stemming from the addition of the Public Safety Communications Center Phase 2 electrical distribution and HVAC upgrade project. One of the things I wanted to mention first is the 6D police station, which is Gaithersburg and Montgomery Village area. This has actually been in the CIP since 2003. It's been delayed for several different reasons over the years, and the station is currently in leased space. This is the second leased space, I believe, since they actually added that. It's not ideal location. It's in a 7-year lease at this point, and that lease is up in December 2025, which curiously is exactly when construction is supposed to be completed on this project in December 2025. And since that is butting right up against the lease, we'd be at the landlord's mercy for a review or for a renewal, or it might even require the police department to move to different space. The Public Safety Committee is recommending that the expenditure schedule for that project be moved up 1 year. Most of the spending is currently programmed in FY24 and 25, and this would move it up to FY23 and 24. The same holds true for the firearms safety range, shooting range, which is new this year. However, it has been in the CIP in the past. It was actually taken out during the recession. There were some minor improvements that were made within their existing appropriation authority. This calls for more dramatic changes, and it's widening the rifle ranges to allow for more lanes, and it is lengthening the pistol ranges from 25 yards to 75 yards. There's been an increase of training needs. There are different law enforcement agencies that use this, including the sheriff. And again, and it would also allow them to run mock scenario training exercises, which is considered a best practice in police use of force training. The Public Safety Committee again recommended that the expenditures for these be expedited by a year up until FY23 and 24. The other 2 projects, the PSTA Academic Building Complex is the one that's located at Great Seneca. Everything's been completed on this, but the project is remaining in the CIP just to manage solicitation, negotiation, and sale of that property. The last one that I'd mentioned before, the Public Safety Communications Center Phase 2, is to replace all the generator plant replacement and redundant electrical distribution upgrades, including other ones. The mission critical ones have already been done. They were done in a different project. These are the non-critical ones. And the Public Safety Committee again recommended approval as submitted.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As a district council member, I really just want to say thank you to the Public Safety Committee. This is something that has been a tremendous challenge for the community, where the community has been patient. AC Patil, but then former Commander Patil and I have had a number of conversations and a number of meetings at that facility. I've seen it in operation and know the challenges that currently exist from a safety perspective, as well as just a location perspective, which is another thing that I think is incredibly important for us to continue to talk about. Visibility of something like this promotes public safety and promotes community policing. Having something that's in the community allows people to see it, engage with it, touch it, taste it, similar to our fire stations that oftentimes serve as hubs of ability for folks to network with our fire personnel. And so certainly this represents a much larger play than just about the safety of the individuals who are being taken in, as well as our officers, but it also serves as a gateway for us to establish even more positive relationships between our community and our police. So I just really want to thank the committee for their recommendation in moving this up, because I know based on that lease that could present a tremendous challenge for us. And so I really just want to thank you for your great work.
Thank you very much, and I too want to thank Susan and for all of her help on this as well. This the fact that we'd be suggesting moving this up really makes a lot of sense, even from a negotiation standpoint on a lease. And we need to do it. It's for a variety of reasons. It wasn't always the Montgomery County's fault that these things weren't being built, but we need to be doing this. So on that, all those in favor of this, the police, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously as well. Next is corrections and rehabilitation, please. And I did want to mention that the director is here, Director Talley.
This CIP includes 2 projects that total $5.5 million in the 6-year schedule. That includes the Criminal Justice Complex and the MCDC partial demolition and renovation project. These all deal with the same piece of property at 7 Locks, the current MCDC jail where central booking services as well as other services are performed. The Criminal Justice Complex was originally envisioned to be a complete replacement of MCDC, and it was supposed to be more efficient, safer, better workflow for the different types of functions that are being performed there. Over the years, it was re-envisioned to include some pre-booking diversion abilities, including a sobering center, as well as connections to mental health and drug abuse and substance abuse services. The original cost was $120 million, which is just untenable at this point, so it's being paused for a bit to re-envision what that is exactly going to look like. And in the meantime, they're taking into consideration the fact that we now have a mental health court in the county, as well as the STEER program, which are pre-diversion programs. Along with that is the MCDC partial demolition and rehabilitation project. They are going to move different programs within the jail to different areas and then rehab places to make, again, safer, better workflow, more modern as far as programs go. And then they're going to demolish other aspects of MCDC, primarily for security reasons, on that piece of property. I did want to mention, since there is a change, or I should say more re-examination of the pre-booking diversion programs that are involved with the CJC, they may do some of these off-site and not necessarily at the CJC. They haven't determined that yet. Pre-booking diversion programs have had a lot of success across the nation, but there is also a racial disparity component to that. So the committee has added a racial equity impact assessment on Circle 2 to the CIP, and this would have the departments who are involved in both the operations impact and the planning of the building itself to impact look at what the racial equity impacts may be as they're going through the process. And again, the committee recommended approval as submitted along with this new language.
Thank you very much. Did you have anything to add, Director? No. You know when you're going to be successful, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
I think you're well aware of MCDC.
All those in favor of this, please raise your hand, and that carries unanimously by those present. Thank you very much, and thank you, Director, for all that you do for Montgomery County each and every day. We sincerely appreciate it. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Torregas and Susan about the public safety systems modernization.
I can walk you through this one as well. The project cost is $113.49 million. This is reflecting a funding increase of $2.7 million over the approved FY19-24 CIP. This project has been in place since FY09, and over the years it's provided funding for several different sub-projects and the associated staff charges needed to upgrade and modernize various public safety systems. The current sub-projects include now the records management system and the radio systems infrastructure project. And the council worked at length last year on the radio systems infrastructure project because of the potential delay of 2 towers, one in Bretton Woods and one at the interchange of the George Avenue and ICC. The council and the executive did agree to maintain the December 2020 completion schedule for these, and they've been going on schedule to date, and they are projected to have a 2020
December.
December 2020 completion date. This does, I do have to underscore the fact that that would require that every single permitting process and those types of associated operational impacts will have to go on time as planned. But I don't think if there is any slippage, it will not be significant slippage from that date. The other project for your review, and here's the records management system that was formerly called the Law Enforcement Records Management System, and it deals primarily with the police records management. But the sheriff will be involved in this, and historically, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation had been involved in this whole records management system. as well. The current e-justice system is an aging Oracle-based database system, and it's pretty unwieldy. It's been around since 2004. It's not reporting out in the most efficient manner all the data that everybody needs today. And as Councilmember Jawanda mentioned in a previous session here, the Office of Legislative Oversight is conducting different police data reports, and we should have more information on that in a few months, I believe. I'm not exactly sure of the time schedule for that. But the Joint Committee would like to come back in the fall sometime and review in more detail the interoperability of these different public safety records management systems and how this new records management system could facilitate more efficient data collection and analysis with the other agencies. The committee's recommended approval as submitted.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank the council president and the chair of the committee for the work that you did and for ensuring that the county did not fall behind on the public safety system modernization. I think that will be one of the more significant issues that we would have resolved over the past, we will have resolved over the past year. Pursuing that, not accepting delay, I think the wisdom of our push there is really showing itself now. The county executive had originally agreed that some of the neighborhood concerns in the Olney area were sufficient to delay the project and find an alternative location for that tower. Well, my colleagues were all receiving emails from some of the neighbors around Blair High School. And there's people there who do not want to see a public safety tower there. Now, I do. I want to know that my kids are safe at Blair High School when they go there in a couple of years, and that surrounding community is safe. So I have absolutely no problem with in fact, I think it's an advantage, to have a strong public safety radio network. But what would be the grounds to push ahead with this one if we had already caved on, the neighborhood concerns around the Olney area? So again, I want to thank the committee chair for being resolute on that issue. We've got to get this done on time. I continue to hear concerns about the county's own processes in moving forward on this. So we'll be watching that closely to ensure that we get it done. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the committee and for the work. As was mentioned, I just wanted to highlight the vital importance of this, not only the radio tower information, the radio capability, but also the records capability. They're both extremely important for related reasons. Obviously, we want to make sure our public safety folks are out there and can communicate and do it in a timely fashion and not have any downtime as they're trying to protect and serve. And equally, we need to know what's happening with our data, what the interactions are, how can we track it, how can we pull it. We have, my sense over this last year plus is that we have data overload, and we're collecting a lot of things, but the analysis is not necessarily there. And I've heard the answer to a question I've had many times is, well, it's going to take us a while to pull that, or I don't know if we can get that, or I don't know if we're looking at it that way. And that's why we're doing this OLS study. So this is really important money to make sure that that's there. I did want to ask, is Adam Kisthart or Mike Balatrosky, or either one of those folks here from MCPD?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So then I will email those questions to them. But I appreciate all the work and look forward to approving this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. I just wanted to note publicly what I've shared with my colleagues. I've asked the Joint Committee to take up this issue of the potential encryption of the police. I guess maybe it's the whole public safety, or if it's just the police, I'm not sure. But I have some real concerns about encrypting that. I think it's a best practice not to have encrypted police radio. I think it creates all kinds of unintended consequences to have encryption. So I'm very concerned about that. And we just need to have a thoughtful discussion here at the council in a timely manner, because the procurement needs to proceed. So I think this is one where the council will need to dive in quickly and and make a determination. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Tragis, did you have anything to add on this, or?
I do not.
Good. Thank you very much. All right, based on that, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Yeah, one of the best speeches we've had at the at the council. Next is Dr. Tragis and Ms. Frog, please, Dr. Tragis.
This is a request from the executive branch to add $487,000 to an existing CIP program called Master Lease Digital Evidence Data Storage. As you see, it's to buy equipment and capacity to help the electronic crime unit within the Montgomery County Police Department because of their expanding use of data. We need places to put it. I'd just like to pause and alert the council that this is kind of the tip of the iceberg. Today, we are very much data-driven as a county, and one of the big questions is, where do we put all the data? Data from video cameras, data for police body cameras, data from police officers that are gathering data on a daily basis. And this is, in a sense, a Band-Aid solution. It is not a comprehensive solution. So the GO committee has asked the executive branch to come back with a strategic plan of how data is planned to be stored in an efficient manner across departments and possibly even across agencies. And the GO committee asked the ITPCC, the Interagency Technology Policy Coordination Committee, to perhaps take up this as a future work program item in their program to look at data needs across the agencies and how we can use economies of scale and new technologies such as the cloud to reduce the cost to the taxpayer and improve the use of data that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Frog, did you have anything to add on this?
I don't. Just a little bit of history. A lot of this stemmed from the state's attorney's office kind of being overwhelmed with body-worn camera and video footage and how to deal with that in an evidentiary manner. So
It's obviously a concern. No other lights. All those in favor of this, the master lease, please, digital evidence data storage, and it carries unanimously by those present. Unless there's anything else, we are in recess. And 30.